Germany, 1933. Adolf Hitler rises to power on a wave of nationalist fury, exploiting the fears of a wounded nation. What follows is not just political tyranny, but a systematic campaign of hate and cruelty, one that would scar humanity forever. At the heart of this darkness was a hatred so profound it defied any reason. A hatred that would culminate in the mass murder of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children. This is the story of Adolf Hitler's war on the Jewish people, driven by a twisted ideology that disregarded the very principles of humanity. To understand Hitler's monstrous actions, we must start with the origins of his warped beliefs.
In Vienna, as a failed artist living in poverty, Hitler began blaming his misfortunes not on himself, but on an imaginary enemy, Jews. Influenced by the anti-Semitic politics of the time, he fed on the lies and hatred that depicted Jews as a corrupt race. In Mein Kampf, Hitler labeled Jews as parasites, accusing them of infiltrating and destroying nations from within. These beliefs weren't just delusional, they were dangerous, and they became the foundation for his campaign of terror.
When Germany lost World War I, Hitler seized on the moment. In the face of defeat, he crafted the stab in the back myth, a false narrative that blamed Jews for betraying the German army, claiming they had conspired against the nation. As the Nazi Party rose to power, Hitler's ideology took root across Germany. But it wasn't just speeches. It was the relentless spread of fear. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's chief propagandist, transformed hatred into policy, filling the media with lies that Jews were responsible for Germany's economic hardships and moral decay.
In the eyes of Hitler and his followers, Jews weren't human beings. They were the enemy. In 1938, the hatred turned to open violence. Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, marked the beginning of an onslaught against the Jewish community. Synagogues burned, Jewish businesses were destroyed, and thousands of Jews were arrested and brutalized. It was just the beginning.
Women to the left, men to the right.
From there, the Nazi regime's campaign escalated into genocide. Millions of Jews were rounded up and deported to concentration camps across Europe. But it was at Auschwitz where the true horror of Hitler's final solution became clear. Auschwitz was the largest of the death camps, a factory of death disguised as a labor camp. For those who arrived, there was no escape, only terror, starvation, and industrialized murder. Jews were crammed into overcrowded trains, often for days, with no food or water. Upon arrival, they were separated. Those deemed fit for labor were sent to work, while the others, including women, children, and the elderly, were led straight to the gas chambers. The atrocities at Auschwitz defy comprehension. Over 1 million Jews were murdered in this camp alone. They were stripped of their dignity, their belongings, and finally, their lives.
The gas chambers at Auschwitz became a symbol of ultimate evil. Hundreds of people at a time were herded inside, told they were going to take a shower. Instead, they were met with poison gas. The air filled with cries for help, but none came. Those who survived the initial selection faced another horror: medical experiments. Victims, often children, were subjected to gruesome tests by Nazi doctors like Josef Mengele. Lives were torn apart for the sake of a twisted ideology under the guise of science.
All Jewish doctors, step forward.
The Holocaust was no accident of war. It was deliberate. Hitler's final solution was the systematic extermination of the Jewish people. It was a cold, calculated policy designed to erase an entire race from existence. In cities and villages across Europe, Jewish communities that had thrived for centuries were wiped out in a matter of months. Entire families vanished. Grandparents, parents, children, erased from history by the twisted vision of one man.
Auschwitz was hell. Auschwitz really was hell. We were on the last but one transport to Auschwitz. The last transport were all the prominents in Terezin who went straight into the gas chamber.
When the Allied forces finally liberated Auschwitz in 1945, they were met with scenes that haunt the world to this day. The skeletal figures of survivors, barely alive, and piles of bodies testified to the unspeakable horror they had endured. For those who survived, liberation was bittersweet. The war was over, but their families were gone, their homes destroyed, and their lives shattered beyond repair.
Hitler's war on the Jews was not just a war. It was a crime against humanity, a crime that left a scar so deep it will forever remind us of the horrors that hatred can unleash.
The Holocaust was born from a hatred that knew no bounds. It's a reminder of what can happen when power is mixed with intolerance, when lies become truth, and when one man's delusion turns into mass murder. The crimes of Auschwitz and the millions of lives lost demand that we never forget.
We owe it to those who perished and to future generations to remember the horrors of the Holocaust. In their memory, we must ensure that such evil never takes root again. Subscribe to the History Hunt to be part of such explorations. Do hit the bell icon for being the first to watch the truth behind the blinds of deception. Like or dislike, but do comment.